I stood frozen in the hallway outside the reception room, my heart pounding as I overheard my sister Amanda plotting to hijack my wedding day. After forcing me to find expensive childcare for her strictly child-free wedding 3 years ago, she was now demanding her 3 unruly children be in my wedding party. But this betrayal cut deeper. "Mom, I'll announce my pregnancy during my toast. Their wedding is the perfect backdrop," she whispered. My wedding day was about to become her stage, unless Domenic and I stopped her. Growing up with Amanda, my older sister by 3 years, was like living in the shadow of a supernova. She was always the brightest, the loudest, and demanded everyone's attention. Our childhood memories are filled with Amanda front and center, whether it was dance recitals where she pushed to the front row, or family gatherings where she interrupted conversations to showcase her latest achievement. I learned early to step back and give her the spotlight she craved, hoping it would keep the peace in our household. Despite the constant competition, I loved my sister. We shared secrets under blanket forts, defended each other against neighborhood bullies, and spent countless summer evenings catching fireflies in our backyard in suburban Pennsylvania. I genuinely believed our bond was unbreakable, that blood would always be thicker than water. How naive I was. When Amanda got engaged to Troy, a successful financial advisor she met during her master's program, the wedding planning consumed every family conversation for 18 months. I was genuinely happy for her and volunteered countless hours helping with decorations, venue research, and even addressing 200 invitation envelopes by hand because she insisted calligraphy was more elegant than printed labels. Then came the bombshell. 6 months before her wedding, Amanda announced that her celebration would be strictly child-free. "We want a sophisticated atmosphere," she explained during Sunday dinner at our parents' house. "No crying during the ceremony or kids running wild at the reception." My heart sank. At that time, my 2 children, Lily and Jack, were 4 and 6 years old. Finding childcare wasn't just inconvenient, it was a significant challenge. The wedding was in the Catskills, a 3-hour drive from our home, and required a whole weekend stay. "But Amanda, how am I supposed to find someone to watch the kids for an entire weekend?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "We don't know anyone near the venue." Amanda's response was immediate and dismissive. "That's not my problem, sis. You figure it out. Everyone deserves their perfect day, and mine includes a mature, adults-only celebration." Our mother nodded in agreement. "Amanda has a vision for her wedding, honey. I'm sure you can work something out." The following weeks were stressful as I called every babysitter, family friend, and distant relative looking for help. Eventually, I found a college student willing to watch the children, but it cost nearly $800 for the weekend plus the extra hotel room, money that, frankly, we didn't have to spare. But I bit my tongue, arranged everything, and showed up to her wedding with a smile, supporting her perfect day without complaint. The wedding was elegant, I'll give her that. Everything from the champagne fountain to the 7-tier cake screamed extravagance. I played my part as the dutiful sister, helping her with her dress, fixing her makeup when she cried during the father-daughter dance, and giving a heartfelt toast that took me weeks to perfect. It was during the reception, while getting a drink at the bar, that I overheard a conversation that made my blood run cold. "Your nieces and nephews are so well behaved," a woman was saying to Troy. "I thought this was a no-children wedding." Troy laughed casually. "Oh, those are exceptions. They're family, and Amanda adores them. Plus, they're part of our special family photos." I froze, glass in hand. Turning slightly, I spotted them Troy's brothers' 3 children, all under 10, dressed in miniature formal wear and helping themselves to cake at a corner table. The hypocrisy burned, but I said nothing that night. This was her day, I reminded myself. I wouldn't create a scene. 2 weeks later, after they returned from their honeymoon in Bali, I finally brought it up during coffee at her new apartment. "I saw Troy's nieces and nephews at the wedding," I said carefully. "I thought it was strictly no children." Amanda didn't even have the decency to look embarrassed. She waved her hand dismissively, the large diamond on her ring finger catching the light. "They're family, it's different," she said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "Besides, they're well-behaved, not like." "Well, you know how spirited your 2 can be." The implication that my children weren't good enough to attend hung in the air between us. I swallowed the hurt, nodded, and changed the subject. But something shifted that day, a tiny crack in the foundation of our relationship that would only widen with time. Over the next year, I tried to ignore that nagging feeling of betrayal. Family holidays remained cordial, though I noticed I was making most of the effort. Amanda was always too busy with her new life, her successful husband, and their growing social circle to call or visit regularly. Still, I maintained the relationship, believing that siblings should stick together, especially as our parents aged. What I didn't realize then was that Amanda's wedding was just the beginning of a pattern where her needs, her desires, her vision of how things should be always took precedence over everyone else's, especially mine. And I had no idea how much that pattern would test the limits of our relationship in the years to come. 5 years passed. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm for me. Lily and Jack were thriving in school, and I had finally finished my master's degree in education while teaching full-time. The biggest change, however, was meeting Domenic. We connected at a school fundraiser where he was volunteering. His nephew attended the same school as my kids. Domenic owned a successful construction company, specializing in eco-friendly renovations. From our first conversation about sustainable building materials, not exactly romantic, but it sparked something, I was drawn to his quiet confidence and genuine interest in listening rather than dominating conversations. After 6 months of dating, he proposed during a simple picnic at the local botanical gardens. No flash mobs, no elaborate schemes, just an intimate moment between us with his grandmother's restored vintage ring. I said yes immediately, my heart fuller than I thought possible. The children adored him. He spent weekends teaching Jack woodworking and attended every one of Lily's soccer games. He respected their boundaries, never trying to replace their father but becoming a consistent, loving presence in their lives. When we announced our engagement at a family dinner, everyone seemed genuinely happy. Even Amanda offered what appeared to be sincere congratulations, hugging me tightly and admiring the ring. "I'm so happy for you," she said, eyes bright with excitement. "You deserve this." Later that evening, she pulled me aside. "I want to help with everything," she insisted. "Planning my wedding was the most amazing experience, and I want yours to be perfect too." I appreciated the offer but explained we wanted something simple. "Just family and close friends," I told her. "Nothing extravagant." She nodded understandingly, though I noticed a flicker of something disappointment, judgment, cross her face. The following week, Amanda called and asked to be my maid of honor. Despite our complicated history, she was still my sister, and I wanted her involved in this important day. I agreed, feeling hopeful about rebuilding our bond through this shared experience. Initially, wedding planning was peaceful. Domenic and I agreed on most details: a spring ceremony in a local historic garden, reception at a nearby family-owned restaurant, and a honeymoon in Maine, where we'd rented a coastal cottage. We wanted a celebration that reflected our blended family, including activities for the children who would be very much present. The first hint of trouble came during a venue tour. Amanda had insisted on joining us, claiming her experienced eye would be valuable. As the garden manager showed us the ceremony space, a beautiful gazebo surrounded by blooming cherry trees, Amanda whispered loud enough for everyone to hear, "This is quaint. But have you considered the Grand Valley Hotel? Their ballroom is spectacular, and the photo opportunities are much better." Domenic squeezed my hand reassuringly, as I explained we loved the garden's natural beauty and intimate setting. "Plus," I added, "this place is special to us. We had one of our first dates here." Amanda's smile tightened. "Well, it's your wedding," she said, in a tone that clearly communicated her disapproval. "But remember, these photos last forever." Later that evening, as Domenic and I discussed floral arrangements at our kitchen table, my phone buzzed with messages from Amanda. She'd taken the liberty of researching upgrades to our venue, including renting premium chairs, adding a champagne fountain similar to hers, and hiring a string quartet instead of the local guitarist we'd selected. "Just some ideas to elevate the experience," her text read. "Trust me, you'll thank me later." The suggestions continued over the next few weeks: more elaborate centerpieces, a more expensive photographer, a designer dress instead of the vintage-inspired gown I'd fallen in love with. Each recommendation came with thinly veiled criticism of our choices, always framed as helpful advice from someone who'd done it right. Then came the conversation that changed everything. We were discussing the wedding party over lunch at our parents' house. I mentioned that Lily would be my junior bridesmaid and Jack would carry the rings. "What about my three?" Amanda asked suddenly. "Harper would make an adorable flower girl, and the twins could be ring bearers with Jack." I hesitated. Amanda's children, Harper, 10, and the twins Ben and Brady, both 8, were, to put it kindly, spirited. At family gatherings, they demanded constant attention, broke things without apology, and rarely followed directions. The thought of them in the wedding party made me anxious. "We've already planned the procession," I explained gently, "and the kids are excited about their special roles." Amanda's expression darkened. "So my children aren't welcome, after everything I did for your kids at my wedding?" The irony nearly made me choke on my iced tea. "Amanda, you specifically banned my children from your wedding." "That was different," she insisted. "We wanted an adult atmosphere. Your wedding clearly includes children, so why not mine?" Our mother, ever the peacekeeper, interjected. "Maybe you could find some special jobs for Amanda's children too? Family is family after all." Before I could respond, Domenic arrived to pick me up. It was his first time meeting Amanda, and I watched nervously as they exchanged pleasantries. Domenic was unfailingly polite, but I noticed his posture stiffen as Amanda dominated the conversation, telling him all about her perfect wedding and how she was guiding me through planning mine. In the car afterward, he was unusually quiet. "What did you think?" I finally asked. He chose his words carefully. "She seems very sure of herself, and not particularly interested in what you want for your own wedding." That simple observation from someone meeting her for the first time crystallized what I'd been feeling but couldn't articulate. Still, family harmony seemed worth temporary compromise. 2 days later, Amanda cornered me at my house, arriving unannounced while Domenic was at work. "I've been thinking about the kids' roles," she announced, making herself comfortable on my couch. "Harper has been taking dance lessons, so she'll be perfect as the flower girl. The boys can practice holding the pillow together with Jack." "Amanda," I started. "We've already—" "Plus," she continued, as if I hadn't spoken, "this is the perfect opportunity for them to be part of something special. After you missed their school play and Ben's baseball championship." The guilt trip was expertly delivered. I had missed those events, though not by choice. They'd conflicted with parent-teacher conferences I couldn't reschedule. After an hour of persistent pressure, wearing down my resistance with everything from guilt to tears, I reluctantly agreed. Her 3 children would join the wedding party, with specific roles to be determined. As she left, triumphant, I felt a familiar sensation in the pit of my stomach, the feeling of having once again been steamrolled by Hurricane Amanda. When I told Domenic that evening, his expression was concerned but supportive. "It's your decision," he said carefully, "but I want you to remember something important. This is our day, not hers. You don't have to say yes to everything she demands." His words planted a seed, one that would grow stronger as Amanda's interference increased and my patience diminished. Little did I know this was just the beginning of her campaign to remake our wedding in her image, a campaign that would ultimately force us to take a stand neither of us anticipated. As spring approached and our wedding date loomed 6 months away, Amanda's involvement intensified from occasional suggestions to near-constant interference. She began inviting herself to every vendor meeting, often arriving before us and establishing rapport with the florist, caterer, or decorator. More than once, I arrived to find her deep in conversation, showing photos of her own wedding as inspiration. "I've already discussed some options," she'd inform us proudly. "I know exactly what will work." What followed was usually a presentation of ideas completely contrary to what Domenic and I had discussed. Elaborate where we wanted simple, traditional where we preferred contemporary, expensive where we had budgetary constraints. The dress shopping experience became particularly fraught. I'd researched local boutiques and found a small, woman-owned shop that specialized in vintage-inspired gowns. The owner, Sarah, had created a beautiful collection that aligned perfectly with my vision: romantic silhouettes, with modern touches, nothing overly formal or princess-like. Amanda insisted on joining me, along with our mother and my best friend Tara. From the moment we entered the boutique, Amanda took charge. "My sister needs something truly spectacular," she announced to Sarah. Her first thought was something vintage-inspired, but I'm thinking we go more dramatic. Perhaps a ball gown with cathedral train. She needs something that creates a statement. Sarah looked to me questioningly, as Amanda began pulling dresses from the racks, all elaborate designs with beading, sequins, and dramatic features that weren't remotely my style. "Actually," I interjected, "I was hoping to try some of the simpler A-line designs we discussed on the phone." Amanda's laugh was dismissive. "Trust me, those won't flatter your figure. You need structure and drama to look your best in photos." After trying on 3 of her selections, each making me feel uncomfortable and unlike myself, I insisted on seeing the dresses I'd originally wanted. The 4th dress I tried was perfect, a simple silk A-line with delicate lace overlay and cap sleeves. When I looked in the mirror, I felt beautiful, confident, and most importantly, like myself. "This is it," I said, tears forming. "This is my dress." Tara and Sarah both agreed enthusiastically, but Amanda's face told a different story. "It's so plain," she said, eyeing the dress critically. "There's nothing special about it. No wow factor." "I think she looks beautiful," Domenic's sister Jamie countered, having joined us late. "Elegant and timeless." "Well," Amanda sniffed, "I suppose simple might work if that's really what you want. I just thought you'd want to look extraordinary on your big day." Our mother, who had been quiet during most of the appointment, finally spoke up. "Amanda does have experience with these things. Her wedding was featured in that regional bridal magazine. Maybe consider something with a bit more presence." The excitement of finding my perfect dress deflated under their criticism. I ended up putting down a deposit but left feeling uncertain rather than elated. That evening, Domenic found me looking at elaborate gowns online. "What happened to the dress you described? The one you said made you feel perfect?" he asked, sitting beside me. I explained Amanda and my mother's reactions. Maybe they're right. Maybe it is too simple. Domenic closed my laptop gently. "Do you remember what you said when you described that dress to me?" Your whole face lit up. "You said you felt like yourself, but on the best day of your life. That's the dress you should wear, not something your sister thinks will photograph better." His unwavering support reinforced my original choice. The next day, I called Sarah and confidently confirmed the order for my plain but perfect dress. As wedding planning continued, family gatherings became increasingly tense. At Easter dinner, Amanda's children ran wild through my parents' house, knocking over a vase and interrupting conversations to demand attention. When Lily politely asked Ben to stop taking food from her plate, he pushed her chair, nearly causing her to fall. "Kids will be kids." Amanda laughed when Dominic stepped in to check if Lily was okay. "They're just playing." "There's a difference between playing and disrespecting others," Dominic replied calmly. "Lily asked him to stop taking her food, and that should be respected." Amanda's expression hardened. "Are you saying my son is disrespectful?" "I'm saying all children need to learn boundaries," Dominic answered, "including how to respond when someone says no." The tension was palpable, but what concerned me more was the behavior itself. These were the children who would be part of our ceremony in just a few months, expected to follow directions and behave appropriately during one of the most important moments of our lives. The cake tasting should have been one of the more enjoyable planning experiences. We'd found a small bakery known for their delicious but less conventional flavors: lavender honey, orange cardamom, and a chocolate espresso that Domenic particularly loved. Amanda, who had again insisted on joining, wrinkled her nose at each sample. "These are so unusual. What about classic vanilla with raspberry filling? That's what everyone expects in a wedding cake." "We want something that reflects us," I explained. "Neither of us are particularly traditional." After much discussion, we settled on the chocolate espresso cake with vanilla bean buttercream, a compromise that satisfied both our desire for something special while remaining accessible for guests with simpler palates. While Domenic was discussing delivery logistics with the baker, I excused myself to use the restroom. I returned to find Amanda leaning over the counter, pointing at something on the order form. "What's going on?" I asked, approaching the counter. The baker looked confused. Your sister was just clarifying the final order. She mentioned you had reconsidered and wanted to go with the vanilla raspberry after all. My eyes widened as I looked at Amanda, who smiled innocently. I know you were concerned about pleasing the guests. Vanilla is always a safe choice. Before I could respond, Domenic returned. Sensing the tension, he asked what was happening. When the baker explained, Domenic's normally calm demeanor shifted. There seems to be some confusion, he said firmly. We're ordering the chocolate espresso cake we selected. My fiancé and I are the ones getting married, and that's our final decision. In the car afterward, Amanda's behavior finally crossed a line for Domenic. What happened in there wasn't okay, he said. She waited until you were gone to change your choice. That's not helping, that's hijacking. She means well, I replied automatically, the peacekeeper role so deeply ingrained. Does she? He challenged gently. Because from where I'm standing, she's not supporting your vision for our wedding. She's trying to recreate hers. That evening, Amanda called. Instead of apologizing, she expressed concern about Domenic's controlling attitude at the bakery. I was just trying to help, she insisted. He seemed so aggressive. I'm worried about how he treats you when no one's around. The manipulation was so transparent it took my breath away. Domenic was defending our choice after you tried to change our order behind my back, I replied, my voice shaking slightly with anger. I was only thinking about what would please the most guests, she countered. That's what experienced hosts consider. But if you want to make this about me, fine. The next day, calls and texts started arriving from various family members. Aunt Susan wondered why I was creating drama over cake flavors. Cousin Beth suggested I should be more appreciative of Amanda's experience. Even our father called to ask why I was making wedding planning so difficult for everyone. Amanda had effectively mobilized the family against us, positioning herself as the helpful victim and us as difficult and ungrateful. The realization that she would go this far contacting extended family to pressure me was stunning. That night, I had my first panic attack about the wedding. What should have been one of the happiest times of my life was becoming a battlefield, with each decision scrutinized and challenged by the person who should have been supporting me the most. Domenic held me as I cried, his steady presence a counterbalance to the chaos Amanda created. We need to set boundaries, he said softly. This isn't about cake or dresses anymore. It's about respect. He was right, of course. The question was whether Amanda would ever respect any boundary we established, and whether our relationship could survive if she didn't. Little did we know that her most audacious move was still to come, one that would force us to make a decision we never thought possible. 2 months before the wedding, we faced another hurdle, planning the rehearsal dinner. Traditionally, the groom's family handles this event, and Domenic's parents had generously offered to host at their favorite local Italian restaurant. Amanda, however, had other ideas. A restaurant rehearsal dinner is so basic, she declared during a family dinner. You should let me host it at my house. I've been wanting to show off our new outdoor kitchen and patio. It would be so much more personal. Before Domenic or I could respond, she continued outlining her vision for an elaborate backyard soiree, complete with hired servers, custom cocktails, and a multi-course menu she'd personally oversee. Her enthusiasm might have seemed generous to an outsider, but I recognized the familiar pattern Amanda centering herself in our celebration. That's very thoughtful, Domenic replied carefully, but my parents have already made arrangements. The restaurant has special meaning for our family. Amanda's smile faltered slightly. Well, at least let me contribute something special. Perhaps I could coordinate custom welcome bags for out-of-town guests? We agreed to this smaller involvement, hoping it would satisfy her need to participate without giving her control over an entire event. 2 weeks later, Amanda called with an update on the welcome bags along with an invoice for nearly $2,000. These are top-quality items, she explained when I gasped at the total. Local artisanal snacks, custom-printed itineraries, monogrammed water bottles. Nothing but the best for your guests. Amanda, this is way beyond our budget, I protested. We agreed on simple welcome notes with some snacks and water. You can't put a price on first impressions, she replied dismissively. Besides, I've already ordered everything. The deposits are non-refundable. This financial ambush led to our first major confrontation. When Domenic and I arrived at her house to discuss the situation, her husband Troy quickly made himself scarce, retreating to their home office with a knowing look that suggested this wasn't the first time Amanda had created such a situation. "You committed us to expenses without approval," Domenic stated calmly but firmly. "That's not acceptable. We're working within a budget, which you know." Amanda's eyes narrowed. "I was doing you a favor, elevating your wedding experience. But fine, if you want a bargain basement celebration, that's your choice." "It's not about being cheap," I interjected. "It's about spending our money on what matters to us, not what you think is important." The conversation grew increasingly heated, with Amanda eventually dissolving into tears, claiming we didn't appreciate her efforts and experience. We left with the situation unresolved, the welcome bags becoming yet another battleground in the increasingly tense wedding planning process. A week later, we scheduled a wedding venue walkthrough with key family members and the bridal party. The garden looked beautiful, with early spring blooms beginning to appear exactly as we'd hoped for our May ceremony. Amanda arrived with her 3 children in tow, despite my specific request that this be an adults-only meeting where we would discuss logistics and timing. "Sitter canceled last minute," she explained breezily, though the knowing smirk on Harper's face suggested otherwise. What should have been a productive hour-long walkthrough turned into a stressful 2-hour ordeal. The twins raced through carefully maintained flower beds, ignoring repeated requests to stay on paths. Harper complained loudly about being bored, demanding her mother's phone, and interrupting the venue coordinator's important instructions. The breaking point came when Ben and Brady discovered the garden's small ornamental pond. Despite clear signs prohibiting touching the water feature, they began throwing pebbles at the koi fish, disturbing both the fish and the serenity of the garden. When the venue coordinator politely but firmly asked them to stop, Amanda became defensive. "They're just being boys," she said dismissively. "Fish aren't bothered by a few pebbles." Domenic, seeing the coordinator's distress and the potential damage to our relationship with the venue, stepped in. "Ben, Brady, that behavior isn't acceptable," he said firmly. "Those fish could be hurt, and we need to respect the rules of this beautiful place." Amanda's face flushed with anger. "Don't discipline my children," she snapped. "You're not their father." "No," Domenic replied evenly. "But this is our wedding venue, and we're responsible for anyone we bring here. The boys need to follow the rules or leave the pond area." Her children's behavior and Amanda's defensive response confirmed our growing concerns about including them in the wedding party. How could we trust them to follow directions during the ceremony when they couldn't even behave during a simple walkthrough? That evening, we gathered at my parents' house for dinner. The tension from the walkthrough lingered, with Amanda pointedly ignoring Domenic and speaking to me only when necessary. Her children continued their rambunctious behavior, running through the house and interrupting conversations, while Amanda scrolled through her phone, barely glancing up to supervise them. Midway through dinner, Amanda suddenly brightened, setting down her phone with a dramatic flourish. "I have some exciting news," she announced, commanding everyone's attention. "I've been planning a special surprise for the wedding reception." My fork froze halfway to my mouth. "What kind of surprise?" She waved her hand dismissively. "Nothing that will take away from your day, I promise. Just a little something special that everyone will love." Alarm bells rang in my head. "Amanda, we've finalized the reception schedule. There isn't room for unplanned additions." "Don't be so rigid," she chided. "The best weddings have spontaneous, heartfelt moments. Trust me, this will be something everyone remembers." Her secretiveness, combined with the self-satisfied smile she couldn't suppress, filled me with dread. What was she planning? A surprise performance? A slideshow? With Amanda, the possibilities were endless and equally concerning. When pressed for details, she became evasive. "If I tell you, it won't be a surprise. Just trust that it's coming from a place of love." The conversation moved on, but my anxiety remained. After dinner, I tried again to extract information, but Amanda deflected each question with practiced skill. As we were leaving, my mother pulled me aside. "Try not to worry about whatever Amanda's planning," she advised. You know how she is, she loves making things special. Just go with it. But going with it had been my approach to Amanda's behavior for years, and look where that had gotten us. Besides, this was our wedding, not a family dinner she could hijack with an impromptu announcement or performance. Over the following week, more concerning information surfaced. My bridesmaid, Tara, called, confused about conflicting instructions. Amanda texted all the bridesmaids, she explained. She said we should wear pearl earrings instead of the silver ones you selected. Something about them photographing better with the lighting. I hadn't approved this change. When confronted, Amanda claimed she was coordinating details to help me, insisting the pearl earrings would look more cohesive in photos. Then came the seating chart drama. During what should have been a straightforward meeting to finalize table assignments, Amanda lobbied aggressively for changes that would place her family in more prominent positions. Troy's parents should be at the front table with Mom and Dad, she insisted, and our table should be closer to the head table. We're immediate family, after all. What she failed to mention was that these changes would displace Dominic's elderly grandmother from her carefully selected seat near the restrooms and move his sister and her husband to a back table despite their roles in the plastid. Ceremony. The current arrangement is thoughtfully planned, Dominic explained patiently. We've considered mobility issues, relationships, and making sure everyone feels valued. Amanda's response was immediate and cutting. Well, it doesn't feel like you value your sister very much, putting us in the corner like afterthoughts. The final straw came during the ceremony decoration review. We'd chosen simple, elegant arrangements for the garden gazebo natural greenery, with white roses that complemented the spring blooms, without competing with the garden's natural beauty. Amanda had brought sample materials just to consider elaborate crystal garlands, large satin bows, and artificial flower arrangements that clashed horribly with our vision and the garden setting. While Domenic and I were speaking with the florist, Amanda's twins began playing with the sample decorations. In their roughhousing, they knocked over and broke several glass votives we'd selected for the aisle. When Domenic asked them to be more careful, explaining these were important items for our wedding, Amanda immediately became defensive. They're bored, she declared. This whole meeting is taking too long. If you had just agreed to my suggestions from the beginning, we'd be done by now. Driving home afterward, Domenic finally voiced what we'd both been thinking. I'm concerned about having her children in the wedding party, he said carefully. Based on their behavior and Amanda's unwillingness to set boundaries, I'm worried they'll disrupt the ceremony. The same thought had been growing in my mind, but hearing him say it aloud made the concern real and unavoidable. Her children were unpredictable and often poorly behaved, and Amanda enabled rather than addressed their disruptive actions. I don't know how to address it without causing a major family rift, I admitted. A temporary family tension is better than looking back on our wedding day with regret, Domenic replied. This day happens once. We should protect it. That night, lying awake long after Domenic had fallen asleep, I wrestled with the decision. Limiting Amanda's children's roles would undoubtedly create conflict, potentially lasting damage to our relationship. Yet allowing the current situation to continue felt like surrendering our wedding to chaos and Amanda's controlling influence. What I didn't realize was that Amanda's special surprise would soon force our hand, making this dilemma pale in comparison to the choice we would ultimately face. 3 weeks before the wedding, my mother organized a final planning meeting at my parents' house. With most details finalized, this was meant to be a straightforward review of the timeline, confirming everyone understood their responsibilities for the big day. I arrived early, hoping to set up my planning binder and checklist before everyone else arrived. As I approached the front door, I heard Amanda's voice drifting from the kitchen window, which was cracked open despite the cool spring air. Mom, this is going to be perfect. I'll give my maid of honor toast, and then I'll motion for Troy to bring the kids up with their special t-shirts. When everyone sees Big Brother and Big Sisters written on them, they'll go crazy. My blood ran cold as I froze on the front step, keys in hand. Are you sure that's appropriate, dear? My mother's voice replied, her tone concerned but not condemning. It is their wedding day. The focus should be on them. Amanda's dismissive laugh carried clearly through the window. Family celebrations should include all family joy. Besides, I'm already 12 weeks along, I can't hide it much longer. Some relatives are flying in from across the country, This way, I can tell everyone at once instead of making 100 phone calls. Well, my mother hesitated. Perhaps you should discuss it with your sister first? Make sure she's comfortable with the timing? Why wouldn't she be? Amanda replied, her tone suggesting the very idea was absurd. She'll be thrilled for us. And it's not like I'm doing it during the ceremony, just a quick announcement during the reception when everyone's already celebrating. It's perfect timing. I stood there, paralyzed by a mixture of shock, hurt, and rising anger. Once again, Amanda was positioning herself at the center of an event that should have been about Domenic and me. But this went beyond changing cake flavors or seating arrangements. She was planning to commandeer our wedding reception for her pregnancy announcement. Taking a deep breath to compose myself, I walked around to the kitchen door and entered without knocking. Amanda and my mother turned, startled by my sudden appearance. "How long have you been standing there?" Amanda asked, her expression shifting from surprise to defensiveness. "Long enough," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "Long enough to hear you're planning to announce your pregnancy at our wedding reception." Amanda recovered quickly, her face arranging itself into an expression of wounded innocence. "I was going to tell you today, actually. I thought it would be a beautiful family moment, all of us sharing in each other's happiness. By hijacking our wedding reception?" I challenged. "By making your announcement during an event that's supposed to be celebrating our marriage." "It's not hijacking," she protested. "It's just a brief moment during the reception. Everyone will still be focused on you for the rest of the day." The casual way she dismissed my concerns ignited something in me, a slow-burning frustration that had been building for years, through every instance of her putting herself first at my expense. "Amanda, this is our wedding day," I said, struggling to keep my voice level. "The one day that should be about Domenic and me, not about you or your news, however exciting it might be." My mother, ever the peacemaker, stepped in. "Maybe we can find a compromise? Perhaps Amanda could make her announcement at the rehearsal dinner instead?" But Amanda was already shaking her head, her expression hardening. "The rehearsal dinner won't have all the extended family there. Besides, I've already ordered the shirts for the kids and planned how I'll incorporate it into my toast." "So, you made this decision without even considering asking us first?" I asked, incredulous. "Why would I need permission to share my joy with our family?" She countered, her tone becoming defensive and slightly condescending. "You're being selfish. Family should share in all our joy together. Would you really deny me this moment because you can't stand sharing the spotlight for 5 minutes?" The accusation hit me like a physical blow. After years of stepping back to let Amanda shine, after accommodating her demands about our wedding while she had explicitly excluded my children from hers, she was calling me selfish for wanting my wedding day to remain about my marriage. "This isn't about sharing the spotlight," I replied, my voice trembling slightly with suppressed emotion. "This is about basic respect for boundaries and appropriate timing. There will be dozens of family gatherings in the coming months where you can make your announcement." Amanda's eyes narrowed. "I think you're jealous," she said coldly. "You've always been jealous of my life, my success, my perfect family. You can't stand the thought of me having another reason to be celebrated." The unfairness of this accusation left me momentarily speechless. I'd spent our entire relationship celebrating her achievements, supporting her choices, accommodating her needs, often at significant personal cost. "That's enough, Amanda," my mother finally interjected, seemingly recognizing that the conversation had veered into dangerous territory. But Amanda wasn't finished. "No, it's not enough. She needs to hear this. You've always been so wrapped up in your victim mentality, acting like everything I do is some personal attack on you. Maybe if you weren't so insecure, you wouldn't see my happiness as a threat to yours." Tears pricked at my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. This wasn't about insecurity or jealousy, it was about respect. Something Amanda had rarely shown me, especially when it conflicted with her desires. "I'm calling Domenic," I said, pulling out my phone. "He should be part of this conversation." "Of course," Amanda scoffed. "Run to your fiancé to fight your battles. You always did need someone to stand up for you." Ignoring her barb, I stepped into the living room and called Domenic, briefly explaining the situation through a tight throat. He immediately said he was on his way, his voice calm but resolute. While waiting for him to arrive, the atmosphere in the kitchen was frigid. Amanda busied herself with her phone, occasionally making pointed sighs or muttering under her breath about dramatic overreactions. My mother fluttered nervously between us, attempting to smooth things over with offers of tea and awkward small talk neither of us engaged with. When Domenic arrived 20 minutes later, his steady presence was like a life raft in stormy seas. He greeted everyone politely but came directly to my side, his hand finding mine in silent support. "I understand there's some disagreement about an announcement during our reception," he said, his tone measured but firm. Amanda immediately launched into her justification, positioning her plan as a beautiful family moment that I was selfishly opposing. As she spoke, I watched Domenic's expression remain neutral, though I could feel his hand tighten slightly around mine at certain points. When she finished, he nodded thoughtfully. "I appreciate you wanting to share your news with family," he said. "That's understandable. But I have to agree with my fiancé that our wedding day isn't the appropriate time. We'd be happy to help you plan a separate gathering for your announcement, even help with the costs if that's helpful." Amanda's face flushed with anger. "So you're both against me? After everything I've done to help with this wedding, this is the thanks I get?" "This isn't about being against you," Domenic replied calmly. "It's about respecting that certain moments have specific purposes. Our wedding day is about celebrating our commitment to each other." "Family celebrations include all family joy," Amanda repeated, as if this mantra justified her intentions. "You're being selfish and exclusionary." "I think we need to take some time to cool off," I suggested, recognizing that the conversation was becoming increasingly heated without progress. "Fine," Amanda snapped, gathering her purse. "But this discussion isn't over, and Mom agrees with me. Don't you, Mom?" Put on the spot, my mother looked uncomfortable. "I think everyone has valid feelings here," she hedged. "Maybe with some time, we can find a solution that works for everyone." As Amanda stormed out, the slam of the front door seemed to punctuate the end of something, though whether it was just the conversation or something more fundamental in our relationship remained to be seen. In the car ride home, Domenic and I sat in silence for several minutes, processing what had happened. "I can't believe she was planning this," I finally said, my voice small in the enclosed space, "and that she sees nothing wrong with it." Domenic reached over to take my hand. "Her behavior goes beyond inappropriate," he said gently. "This is about control and centering herself, not about sharing family joy." "What do we do?" I asked, feeling suddenly exhausted. "She's not going to back down. I know my sister once she has an idea in her head, especially one that puts her at the center of attention. She's like a dog with a bone." "We have decisions to make," Domenic replied carefully. "Hard ones, about what role we want Amanda to play in our wedding, and what boundaries we need to establish going forward." The weight of those decisions pressed heavily on me as we drove home. I loved my sister despite her flaws, despite her self-centeredness. The thought of major conflict with her, of potential lasting damage to our relationship, made my heart ache. But the alternative, allowing her to continue steamrolling over our wishes, even on our wedding day, had become equally unthinkable. As we pulled into our driveway, Domenic turned to me, his expression serious but loving. "Whatever we decide, we'll face it together. This is about us building our life on our terms, not anyone else's." In that moment, looking at the man who consistently supported me, who recognized my worth when others dismissed it, I felt a resolve crystallizing. Perhaps it was time to stop accommodating Amanda's demands at the expense of my own needs, to finally stand up not just for myself, but for the partnership and family Domenic and I were creating together. The conversation with Amanda had ended, but the real conflict was just beginning. And for the first time, I was prepared to fight for what mattered, even if it meant making painful choices about the role my sister would play in our celebration and in our lives moving forward. The days following our confrontation with Amanda were tense, but strangely clarifying. While I'd hoped she might reflect and reconsider, her response was quite the opposite. Within hours of leaving my parents' house, she had launched what could only be described as a campaign to pressure us into accepting her plan. First came the text messages, dozens of them, ranging from guilt-inducing, "I've always supported you," And this is how you repay me. Too manipulative. Mom is so upset about the family being divided. To outright accusatory, you've always been jealous of my happiness. When those didn't yield the desired response, she escalated to phone calls to various family members, positioning herself as the victim of our unreasonableness. By the next morning, my phone was filled with messages from relatives, many of whom didn't even have all the facts but felt compelled to weigh in. Family announcements are meant to be shared, my Aunt Susan insisted when she called. Amanda is just trying to celebrate with everyone. Maybe you could compromise, suggested my cousin Beth. Let her make her announcement at the end of the reception when some people have already left. Even my father, who typically stayed out of conflicts between his daughters, called to express concern. Your sister is very upset. Is this announcement really worth creating such division in the family? What struck me was how effectively Amanda had reframed the situation, transforming her attempt to co-opt our wedding into a story about us unfairly restricting her joy. It was manipulative and untrue, yet many family members had accepted her narrative without question. Domenic and I sat at our kitchen table that evening, comparing notes on the calls and messages we'd received. The pattern was clear. Amanda was mobilizing family pressure to force our compliance, just as she had with smaller wedding decisions previously. We need to talk about what we really want, Domenic said, his expression thoughtful. Not just about the announcement, but about Amanda's role in our wedding and what boundaries we need. That conversation stretched long into the night. We discussed every aspect of Amanda's behavior over the past months, her constant undermining of our choices, her dismissal of our preferences, her manipulation of family dynamics to get her way. Most importantly, we talked about what our wedding day should feel like, and whether Amanda's current trajectory was compatible with that vision. I've been thinking, I said finally, as midnight approached. What if we asked her to step down as maid of honor? Tara has been supportive throughout this process, and she actually respects our wishes. The idea had been forming in my mind all day, radical and frightening, but increasingly necessary. Amanda had demonstrated repeatedly that she viewed our wedding primarily as a stage for herself, not as a celebration of our commitment. Domenic considered this carefully. It would certainly create tension, he acknowledged. But I'm beginning to think some tension now might prevent disaster on the actual day. She'll be furious, I whispered, the reality of what we were considering settling heavily between us. Yes, he agreed. But the question is whether her anger is worse than the alternative, spending our wedding day anxious about what she might say or do, or how her children might behave. We decided to sleep on the decision, but morning brought no change in our thinking. If anything, waking to find more manipulative texts from Amanda only reinforced our concerns. This pattern wouldn't stop unless we established clear, firm boundaries, something we had both avoided for too long. Before making any announcements, we decided to gather more information. The next day, Domenic and I met with my parents for lunch, hoping to have a calm, honest conversation about the situation. My mother seemed uncomfortable, clearly torn between her daughters, while my father listened with growing concern as we outlined Amanda's behavior over the past months. We're not asking you to take sides, I explained carefully. We just want you to understand why we're considering asking Amanda to step back from her role in the wedding. My father's response surprised me. Your sister has always been strong-willed, he said diplomatically, but what you're describing goes beyond that. Using your wedding for her announcement isn't right, no matter how she tries to justify it. My mother seemed less convinced. She's your sister, she reminded me. Family should come first. Can't you find some compromise? We've been compromising for months, Domenic replied gently. On the cake, the decorations, the music, including her children in the ceremony despite their behavior. At some point, compromise becomes surrender. The conversation didn't end with a clear resolution, but I felt my parents at least understood our position better, even if they weren't fully supportive yet. Our next step was talking with Tara, my closest friend since college, and the logical choice to step into the maid of honor role. Over coffee the following day, I explained the situation and asked if she would be willing to take on additional responsibilities if needed. Her response was immediate and supportive. Of course I will, she said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. I've been worried about how Amanda's been treating you throughout this process. Whatever you need, I'm there." Armed with this backup plan, we felt more confident in our decision. Still, I wanted to give Amanda one final chance to recognize the inappropriateness of her plan. I called and suggested meeting at a neutral location, a small cafe halfway between our homes. She agreed, though her tone suggested she expected me to capitulate rather than continue the discussion. The meeting was tense from the beginning. Amanda arrived with a folder of what appeared to be wedding documents, her expression a mixture of impatience and condescension. "I've been thinking about how we can make this work," she began without preamble. "I'll keep the announcement brief, no more than 2 minutes. The kids will wear their shirts under their wedding outfits, so the reveal will be a surprise for everyone." She continued detailing her plan as if our previous objections had simply been about logistics rather than the fundamental inappropriateness of the announcement itself. When she finally paused, I took a deep breath. "Amanda, that's not why I wanted to meet. The issue isn't the length of the announcement or how you execute it. The issue is that it's not appropriate to make this announcement at our wedding at all." Her expression hardened. "We've been through this. It's a family gathering, the perfect time to share family news." "It's not just a family gathering," I countered. "It's specifically a celebration of my marriage to Domenic. There will be other family gatherings. Thanksgiving is just a few months away. Or you could host a barbecue next month." "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "You're being controlling and selfish. Mom agrees with me, you know. She thinks you're overreacting." The mention of our mother was clearly intended to leverage my desire for family harmony, a tactic Amanda had used effectively throughout our lives. But this time, I didn't yield. "I'm sorry you feel that way," I said quietly. "But Domenic and I have made our decision. There will be no pregnancy announcement at our wedding." Amanda's face flushed with anger. "You can't control what I say in my toast." "Actually," I replied, my heart pounding but my voice steady, "we can. It's our wedding, and if you can't respect this boundary, we'll need to reconsider your role in the ceremony." "Are you threatening to remove me as your maid of honor?" she asked incredulously. "Over this?" "It's not a threat," I clarified. "It's me telling you that your behavior has consequences. You've been undermining our wishes throughout the planning process, and this announcement plan is the final straw." The conversation deteriorated from there. Amanda oscillated between tears, accusations, and attempts at manipulation. She brought up every perceived slight from our childhood, accused me of jealousy and insecurity, and even suggested Domenic was controlling me. When none of that worked, she resorted to threats. "If you do this, you'll regret it," she warned. "The family will be divided, and it will be your fault." Despite the emotional turmoil, I maintained my position. As she gathered her things to leave, I made one final attempt at reconciliation. "Amanda, I love you. You're my sister. But this isn't about not wanting you to share your joy. It's about appropriate timing and respect for our special day. Please try to understand that." Her response was cold. "I understand perfectly. You've made your choice." After she left, I sat alone at the table for nearly 30 minutes, processing what had happened and what would likely come next. When I finally called Domenic to update him, his supportive response reinforced that we were making the right decision, however painful. That evening, we learned that Amanda had wasted no time in spreading her version of events. My phone filled with messages from family members, some expressing concern, others outright condemning our cruelty in excluding Amanda from our celebration. What Amanda hadn't expected, however, was that some family members would contact us directly to get our side of the story. My cousin Rachel, always perceptive, called with suspicions about Amanda's narrative. "She's saying you're banning her from the wedding because you're jealous of her pregnancy," Rachel explained. "But that doesn't sound like you at all. What's really happening?" Given the opportunity to explain, many family members began to understand our position. Some even shared their own stories of Amanda's self-centered behavior at other important events, patterns we hadn't been aware of but which confirmed our concerns. The following day, after discussing it once more, Domenic and I made our final decision. I called Amanda and officially asked her to step down as maid of honor, explaining that her continued insistence on making her announcement at our wedding demonstrated a fundamental lack of respect for our wishes. Her response was explosive. She accused us of attempting to erase her from the celebration, called us controlling and selfish, and insisted she would still attend the wedding and tell the real story to anyone who would listen. "If that's your plan," I said finally, my voice shaking but determined, "then maybe it's better if you don't attend at all." There was a moment of stunned silence on the line. "Are you uninviting me from your wedding?" she asked, her voice a mixture of shock and indignation. "I'm saying that if you can't respect our wishes for our day, if you're planning to create conflict or make announcements against our explicit requests, then yes, it would be better if you didn't come." The conversation ended with her hanging up, but the repercussions continued for days. The family divided somewhat predictably. Those who had experienced Amanda's self-centeredness firsthand understood our position, while others, particularly the older generation who had always indulged her, expressed shock and dismay at our decision. My mother called in tears, begging us to reconsider. My father, though more understanding, expressed concern about long-term family harmony. Extended family members took sides, some canceling their RSVPs in solidarity with Amanda. Through it all, Domenic remained my rock, reminding me that healthy boundaries, while painful to establish, were necessary for our future happiness. Tara stepped smoothly into the maid of honor role, handling last-minute details with grace and genuine support. As our wedding week approached, we learned from multiple sources that Amanda was still planning to attend despite being uninvited. She had apparently told several family members that she would make things right at the wedding, a vague but concerning statement given her previous behavior. We were forced to take the unprecedented step of alerting our venue coordinator and hiring additional security, providing them with Amanda's photo and instructions to politely but firmly prevent her entry if she attempted to attend. The pain of these precautions was immense. Never had I imagined my wedding preparations would include security measures against my own sister. Yet as the day approached, the rightness of our decision became increasingly clear. For the first time in months, I felt excitement rather than dread when thinking about our wedding, no longer anxious about what Amanda might say or do to center herself in our celebration. The stage was set for either a peaceful, joyful wedding day or a confrontation none of us wanted, but for which we were now prepared. All that remained was to see which version of events would unfold. Our wedding day dawned with clear skies and gentle spring sunshine, perfect weather for our garden ceremony. Despite the peace of the morning as I prepared with my bridesmaids, a knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach. Would Amanda respect our decision, or would she create the scene many of us feared? Tara, ever perceptive, noticed my distraction as she helped arrange my veil. "Try not to worry about her today," she said gently. "Everything is handled. This day is about you and Domenic, no one else." She was right, of course. We had taken every reasonable precaution. The venue coordinator had been thoroughly briefed, security was in place, and trusted friends had been asked to intervene if necessary. There was nothing more to do but focus on the joyful commitment we were about to make. The pre-ceremony preparations proceeded smoothly. My father arrived to escort me, visibly emotional at seeing me in my wedding dress. Even my mother, who had been torn between her daughters, seemed to set aside her concerns for the day, helping with last-minute details and sharing quiet, supportive moments as we prepared. It wasn't until 30 minutes before the ceremony that we received the news Amanda had arrived with her husband and children, all dressed for the wedding, demanding entry at the garden gate. My heart sank as the venue coordinator delivered this update, her expression sympathetic but firm. "Security is handling it discreetly," she assured me, "but I thought you should know." Domenic, who had come to check on final arrangements, overheard the conversation. "I'll handle this," he said quietly. "You stay here and finish getting ready." Before I could protest, he was gone, striding purposefully toward the garden entrance. Part of me wanted to follow, to hear what would be said, but Tara gently guided me back to the bridal suite. "Let him handle it," she advised. "That's what partnerships are, for sharing the burdens." 20 minutes passed in tense silence, the joy of the morning temporarily overshadowed by worry. When Domenic finally returned, his expression was composed but determined. "It's taken care of," he said simply. "Amanda and her family have left. The ceremony can proceed as planned." Relief washed over me, followed immediately by curiosity. "What happened? What did you say to her?" Domenic took my hands in his. I told her the truth, that our wedding day is about celebrating our commitment to each other, not a platform for anyone else's announcements. That we'd tried repeatedly to explain this, and her refusal to respect our wishes had led to this moment. That we loved her, but we couldn't allow her behavior to overshadow our celebration. He paused, then continued. I also told her that when she was ready to acknowledge how her actions affected others, when she could respect boundaries instead of bulldozing them, we would welcome rebuilding our relationship. But that healing would have to begin with recognition and respect, not demands and manipulation. Tears pricked at my eyes, not from sadness, but from profound gratitude for this man who understood so clearly what was needed and had the courage to express it. "How did she respond?" I asked softly. A flicker of sadness crossed his face. Not well initially. There were accusations, attempts to push past security, threats about family consequences. But in the end, I think hope that something got through. Before they left, I saw something in her expression change. Not acceptance yet, but perhaps the beginning of recognition. With that difficult moment behind us, we refocused on the celebration ahead. The ceremony proceeded exactly as we'd envisioned, intimate, meaningful, surrounded by those who genuinely supported our relationship. My children participated beautifully, Lily beaming as she carried her basket of flower petals, Jack serious and proud as he presented the rings. As we exchanged vows beneath the blooming cherry trees, I felt a clarity and peace I hadn't expected. The absence of tension that had characterized so many family gatherings was palpable. Without the constant anxiety of managing Amanda's behavior or expectations, we were free to be fully present in each moment. The reception that followed was everything we'd hoped for, joyful, relaxed, a true celebration of not just our marriage but the community of friends and family who had supported us. Tara's maid of honor toast was heartfelt and personal, celebrating our relationship without making herself the center of attention. The band played our carefully selected playlist. The chocolate espresso cake was delicious, and the dance floor stayed filled until the final song. As Domenic and I swayed together during the last dance, I whispered, "Thank you for standing with me through all of this. I couldn't have done it without you." He smiled, pulling me closer. That's what marriage is, facing challenges together, establishing the boundaries our family needs, supporting each other's growth. Today is just the beginning. In the months that followed our wedding, the family dynamics remained complicated. Some relatives maintained that we had been too harsh, excluding Amanda on a technicality, as one aunt put it. Others, having witnessed her pattern of behavior over years, expressed private support for our decision. Amanda herself maintained a chilly distance, declining invitations to family gatherings where we would be present, ensuring our parents were forced to navigate separate celebrations for holidays and birthdays. The pregnancy announcement happened at a hastily arranged barbecue at her house, where she received the attention and celebration she desired. For 3 months, the silence between us was complete. Then, unexpectedly, a card arrived in the mail, a simple note card with Amanda's distinctive handwriting. "I've been thinking about what happened," she wrote. "While I still believe family celebrations should include everyone's joy, I recognize that my approach wasn't respectful of your wishes for your day. This doesn't excuse how you handled things, but I'm willing to talk when you are." It wasn't a full apology. There was still justification and deflection embedded in her words, but it was the first acknowledgement that perhaps her expectations had been inappropriate. A tiny opening where previously there had been only a wall. Domenic and I discussed how to respond, eventually deciding on a careful, measured approach. We invited her to meet for coffee at a neutral location, just the two of us sisters, to begin rebuilding communication. That first meeting was awkward, filled with careful navigation around sensitive topics, but it was a start. Over the following months, small steps led to slightly larger ones. Amanda would never be someone who easily recognized how her actions affected others, but with clear, consistent boundaries, we found a new way to relate, one based not on her expectations or demands, but on mutual respect. The true test came 6 months after our wedding, at Thanksgiving dinner. For the first time since the wedding, our entire immediate family gathered together. The tension was palpable as Amanda and I found ourselves helping in the kitchen, awkwardly moving around each other as we prepared different dishes. "Your green bean casserole always turns out better than mine," she commented, a small but significant olive branch. "I add crispy onions inside the mixture, not just on top," I replied, accepting the peace offering. "I can show you if you want." A moment of genuine connection followed, brief, still fragile, but real. Later, as we all sat around the table, I caught Domenic's eye as Amanda managed to share news about her pregnancy without dominating the entire conversation, actually asking Lily and Jack about their school activities afterward. Progress was slow, the relationship forever changed but not destroyed. Our boundaries hadn't ruined the family. As so many had feared, they had simply reshaped it into something healthier, more respectful, with space for everyone to be seen and valued. The greatest lesson I learned through this painful experience was that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary for authentic relationships. For years, I had confused accommodation with love, believing that constantly yielding to Amanda's demands was how sisters should behave. What I discovered was that true family bonds aren't built on one person always getting their way, but on mutual respect and consideration. Domenic and I built our marriage on that foundation: clear communication, respected boundaries, and genuine support. The painful decision to uninvite my sister from our wedding, while extreme, established from the beginning that our relationship and family would operate by different rules than I had grown up with. Rules that valued everyone's needs, not just the loudest or most demanding voice. 3 years later, as we celebrated our anniversary in the same garden where we'd exchanged vows, I reflected on how that difficult time had ultimately strengthened not just our marriage but my understanding of healthy relationships. Sometimes the hardest choices lead to the most necessary growth, and protecting what matters most requires courage to face short-term pain for long-term healing. Have you ever had to set a difficult boundary with a family member who crossed the line? Did you stand firm or give in to keep the peace? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's an act of self-respect. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you the courage to protect what matters most in your own life.